Oh, hello, and welcome to Compassionate Connections. My name is Chrissie Hodges. I'm the executive director of OCD Gamechangers, which is a nonprofit, and we bring awareness, create community, and connect people who are looking to create community for themselves wherever they are in the world in order to support individuals with OCD. And this is our initiative where we come and talk about all things OCD and addiction, substance use. And we really try to bring a lot of different perspectives on what it means to have addiction, substance use, and OCD. So just before we get started, Chance, he'll introduce himself in a minute. Chance and I tonight are going to talk about living with OCD and substance use. And we are not going to be talking about solutions or what people should be doing, or if we're not doing a certain thing, then we're right or we're wrong. We're just basically talking about lived experience. So we really want to keep the conversation to what it is like with people who struggle with this. So I understand that this is a very inflammatory topic sometimes, and people like to interject what they think everyone should do when they're struggling with substance use. But I want you to please show up and take what you can and try to take away from this what it is like to live with lived experience with these two different disorders. So Chance, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name's Chance McNeely, and I'm an OCD sufferer, and have had it, I guess, most of my life. And as soon as I first tasted alcohol, I knew that I liked it and that I needed more of it. And it helped, minimize symptoms, I guess. All the thoughts, all the worry, all not feeling like I belonged anywhere, it all just went away with my first 2 Miller Lights. I remember it very distinctly.
So classic.
And it could have been something much trashier, I guess. But
Like
so,
I think mine was Harbor Mist. So,
but I mean, before that, I mean, my whole childhood, I definitely never felt like I belonged in anywhere. I certainly didn't feel like I belonged in my own family. And that kind of, I guess, laid the foundation for probably not feeling like I belonged much of anywhere else. Because if you don't belong to one place that you genetically belong, then how are you supposed to belong somewhere else? And so really what alcohol did, I guess, for me at age 15, 16, is helped me feel normal. And it gave me the, I guess, capacity to be a more authentic person, or at least I felt like that's what it was doing. And so I've been on a 20-year, relationship with alcohol. And sometimes it's love and sometimes it's been hate. But I think at the end of the day, for me, my goal in life is not to be sober. I know it's also not my goal to have a chronic substance use disorder that ruins my life. But I think that there's some gray area here that that I intend to live in, for a lot of different reasons. And so, yeah, that's where I'm at with OCD and substance use.
well, thank you. And I think that's exactly what this talk is intended for, is to talk about what it is like to figure out what your relationship with alcohol is, or substitute that with any other substance that you can become addicted to, in a way that's just trying to figure that out instead of demonize it from one extreme to the other. And so there's a lot of different ways I want to take this, but let me just follow up with what you said, Chance, with my own experience, I guess. I grew up in an environment that was very anti-alcohol, very anti anything that was looked at as sinful. So that would be alcohol, cigarettes, sex. I mean, you name it, anything that was other than church and whatever else was wrong, right? And so I, at an early age, made decisions about what was good and bad. And in struggling with OCD, especially religious scrupulosity, I had a very unhealthy relationship with understanding anything outside of what I assumed was pure and right. And so when I had a breakdown when I was 20, 21 years old, and I found out I had OCD, I had a suicide attempt and a hospitalization. When I came back to college as a junior, I'm going to say this, and this is awful, and please don't judge me, but know that I don't know anything else. But all of the things and sins that I judged all of my friends for in the previous years of being in college, I decided, well, why don't I just try them? Because if this OCD thing is real, then I'm not going to get punished. Hashtag religious scrupulosity. So that's the first time I ever had alcohol. That's the first time I ever smoked weed, had sex, anything that I would have deemed as sinful. And so in telling that, I just want to make it clear how OCD can skew your mindset of this is good, this is bad. It very much becomes black and white thinking. Whether you believe it's good or bad, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to me. It doesn't matter to Chance. And what we think shouldn't matter to you. It just, unfortunately, OCD polarizes everything. And so as I started to explore different things that I had always seen as sinful and wrong and would make my OCD worse, then I just became angry that not that I had been denied the opportunity to engage in these things before, but that I had been so misled. But like Chance, I remember the first time I had a drink. It was Arbor Mist, actually. That's this like watered down wine. My grandma used to like hide it under her cabinet, like near a trash can, and she'd be like, "Here you go, Chrissie." It was funny, but like that, I don't consider alcohol. But I remember the first time I had a margarita with my friends, and to feel that kind of numbness wash over me. You know, it was one of the first times, other than when OCD would break for me, and I didn't experience it, which you don't have any control over. That this felt like, wow, I could make this go away. And I wouldn't say that my relationship with alcohol became dysfunctional at that point, because I was still somewhat afraid of it, but it opened my eyes. And hi, everybody. Hello. I see everybody commenting. So good to see y'all. It opened my eyes to, well, what if I could use this as a coping mechanism, right? And and so began my unhealthy relationship with alcohol. And very much like Chance, you know, it's a few decades later, and it's been up and down and up and down. And only recently have I come to terms with it in a way that feels healthy and feels like I'm not constantly fighting against the societal stigma of I'm an alcoholic and I should feel shame. So that's where I'm at up to that point, but I'm sure that there's more that I would like to share.
Well, I mean, I can relate to all of that. And, you know, I think that I mentioned earlier that there are a lot of different reasons why I don't intend to ever be sober, if you will. But before I even go there, I think, you know, one of the things that always strikes me in these conversations about sobriety is that there's like a lot of times what you see is people who are trading addictions, right? So I'm addicted to alcohol, or maybe you're addicted to exercise. I'm not going to debate that maybe like health wise, it'd be better to be addicted to exercising. Like, I'm not trying to say that alcohol is better or something, but whatever it may be that you're addicted to, over the course of my life, I've had probably like, I could probably come up with a dozen different things that somebody could probably clinically tell me that I'm like addicted to something. Now, alcohol may be the most constant. But then at the same time, I've had lots of periods where I still consumed alcohol, but I don't know that it would be considered an addiction per se. It's all cyclical. And so I don't know that there are, this whole idea that sobriety in and of itself is some sort of key to happiness. Like, I don't know that that's true. I'm not here saying that it's like helpful. Like, I don't think that it is helpful per se. But I think that we can put sobriety on this high horse, if you will. And what I think it does is to just shames the shit out of people who
don't have to have sobriety to survive, I guess is a good way to put it.
Yeah, because there are lots of people who have to become sober in order to live.
100%.
There's like, I know people that could be, maybe that'd be me one day. I don't know. I have to live with the uncertainty. Mm-hmm. So, but right now that's not me, and it hasn't ever been me before. Mm-hmm. And so as I look at my life and how to live and deal with all that I have to deal with, at least right now, I mean, I can't think of a time where I've not had some sort of addiction. I mean, the times of my healthiest living that I ever have done has been like, let's put down this addiction and pick up like ridiculous extreme cardio that I almost die from. Mm-hmm. Okay. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think that the goal here is probably just to get to a place to where we can feel. Mm-hmm. Right. If we're willing to feel, then maybe I don't have to do extreme cardio instead of alcohol, or maybe I don't have to, binge watch Netflix as my addiction, whatever your addiction is. But it's really, for me, just not wanting to have to feel mm-hmm. whatever's you're feeling. Mm-hmm. And so pick your poison. Right. But I don't know that I'm not sure I know anyone who doesn't have, if you look at addiction in that broad sense, I don't know any person that doesn't have some form of addiction in their life. And we seem to really stigmatize just a certain few types of addictions.
Well, right, because there's the egocentric addictions, the ones where the world rewards you. Right. So if you're addicted to social media and you spend 99% of your day obsessing over social media, but you have all these followers, then the world is rewarding you for your addiction, right? If you are spending a lot of time drinking and it's impacting your family, the world is not rewarding you. So but I do want to make a point off of what you just said that I think is really important, and something that, and I'm just going to be really honest and transparent here on this live, and that's fine because that's what I do. But what I wanted to do a few years ago is to start talking about all of the people out there that are struggling with substance use, addictive behaviors, but are not to the point where they need to be hospitalized or they need intervention, but they just struggle in their daily lives and they don't feel represented in this conversation, right? And there's so many people out there that struggle with porn use, that struggle with sex, that struggle with pills, that struggle with shopping, social media, alcohol, all these people that struggle with it, but they don't meet the criteria to need to be hospitalized or they have to stop or else, right? So we're looking at the polarized spectrum. You're either sober or you're so bad that you can't do any of it. And we're missing millions of people in the middle here. And when I wanted to start out a few years ago talking about this, to be someone that had lived experience with this, the shame I have endured from this topic really, just so everyone knows, this is the last talk I'm doing about it tonight with Chance. Because frankly, I'm just tired of dealing with it. I'm tired of talking about the reality of people's experience and being told that if you're not sober, then you're a loser, or that this is the only way, and you're, that the X, Y, and Z. And I talk about all kinds of shit on my YouTube channel, like from groinals to any sort of intrusive thoughts there are. But I just don't want the burden anymore of feeling like I have to feel ashamed because I'm representing a portion of the population that has no voice because people are just unwilling to listen or understand. And so tonight I wanted to just come on here and share that, but also to say, like, it's really important to give people a voice who day to day feel struggle and shame, but they don't meet the criteria that they need to be hospitalized. They need intervention to the point where they're going to die, or that where bad things are going to happen, but they're just left in the dark and they're not validated. And basically the message that comes to them is, well, you just need to stop or else. And that's how I feel.
Well, I mean, I provide peer support, not near as frequently as or as much as you have, Chrissy, in your life. But I would say the overwhelming majority of people that I have ever talked to in providing peer support struggle with some sort of addiction, and most of it, I think, is alcohol. I mean, it's certainly the most common. And so to just right, and I mean, so I'll also say, I mean, I live in Louisiana, and not that to be clear, like, I mean, I talk to people all over the world, and I would say that addiction is rampant with OCD and alcohol use, but also in Louisiana, like, most of the people that I know who are not diagnosable with any type of mental health situation in my social circle and in professional, so I mean, everybody consumes probably more alcohol than the government would recommend. And so when you have OCD and you already feel tremendous shame for the fact that you have a mental health issue, right? And then you're ridiculed for sometimes drinking less than like normal people, but it's just not okay for you because you have a lot more going on. And so when when you get into that kind of dynamic, I think it's shaming. And I know after I got treatment from OCD, proper treatment, my alcohol use went like skyrocketed after I was discharged from like successful, ERP therapy. And I was like just drinking way more than I had before. And I had tackled most of the taboo, horrific themes that I dealt with, but I was just wallowing in shame and, being told that I shouldn't drink that's not going to help me drink less. In fact, I normally will drink more just to prove that I can do it. And so,
it's a motivator to drink more.
Wait, what?
Shame is a motivator to drink more. I typically say shame is not a motivator to change behavior. So the shame is a motivator to drink more. The moment I feel shamed about drinking is the moment I reach for a bottle of wine. It's bizarre. Luckily, I catch it now. And Chance and I, we talk a lot about this topic, and I think what's great about like being mutual peer supporters is that we can provide mutual peer support to each other, even as friends. But like, I think it's so, in the last few years and learning more about alcohol and addiction and the role it plays and why it plays a role, which we are not taught, by the way. What we were taught is if you drink, you're bad. If you do drugs, you're bad. You're not taught that, oh, by the way, you're drinking because you were emotionally neglected from the time you were born until you left the household, right before your suicide attempt, which then was blamed on you. And the family decided to say we had nothing to do with it. Like, so, I'm sorry if I picked up a drink after that. Like, my bad. But, in learning about all of that in the last few years, and especially learning that it can be a trauma response, and it can be a huge, lack of a loss of connection. Who is it? What's his name? Johann. Damn it, I should have looked up his name before him, but he did the experiment about the rats who had the cocaine, and then, once the rats had connection, then they didn't want the cocaine anymore. So in learning about all of this, it has become, yes. And hi, Lauren. Yay. Johann Hari. By the way, I've heard him speak in person, and I just cried the whole time. Cried. It was amazing. But in learning about all of this, instead of when I am shamed or go in a trauma response and I reach for the bottle of wine, I feel like, open the bottle of wine, you're going to feel better. Which it doesn't usually make me feel better when it's in a trauma response. I can actually have a choice, because then I can say, okay, my body is reacting this way. This is what happened. This is what I'm experiencing. Chrissie, do you want to sit down and take a minute? Do you want to open the bottle of wine, or do you not? And instead of it just being, I'm a horrible person, I should feel shame, and look at me reaching for the bottle, which has always been the motivator to just open the bottle, because I'm already bad, right? Even thinking about opening the bottle means I'm already bad. So I might as well fulfill that. But now I can see that it's a choice. And now I can see there are reasons that are ingrained in everything that I know that are causing me to look up at that cabinet and grab that bottle of wine. And then I can go, you know what? Why don't I wait an hour? And I'll call Chance, or I'll call a friend, or I'll call someone.
And I'm already drinking. I'm joking.
That's not true. This is normally at like 5. If it was 10, we would be having an issue. PM. So anyway, that's my whole take, is like to be able to see that, like, instead of it just being this immediate, you do this and so it's bad, we have the option of looking at why. And with OCD, I think it's so, so important to explore the why. Sorry, I'm talking a lot. Chance, let me just wrap up really quick. What I see the most for people is they suffer with OCD for years and years and years, and they develop addiction to cope with it. And then they try to go to therapy. And either the therapist says, I won't treat you because you're addicted. Get rid of your addiction first, and then I'll treat you. Or they hide the addiction. They get treatment, and they're just so riddled with shame. And like you said, Chance, then afterwards, the addiction actually might go up, because now we're dealing with 2 problems. That really was because they were suffering for so long and they needed a coping mechanism.
Well, I mean, I had a great thought as you were talking, and I lost it. So I'm hoping that it comes back to me. But,
don't make me
what?
Don't make me recap, because that was a lot.
I feel like that, for me, OCD and addiction have always felt like sort of the same thing. And so the urge to perform a physical or mental compulsion, I have a hard time differentiating the experience from the urge to like want to drink. Like, it feels kind of similar to me. And the relief is kind of similar to me. So I'm not a doctor. I'm not interested in like debating with the nuances of that. But for me, it's a similar experience. And so I guess maybe from my perspective, because I don't think I have this issue where I'm about to die from drinking because it's that big of a problem in my life. I struggle with, like, understanding why I should be sober in the first place. And here's an example of why. For a long time, I was 100%, using sex as a compulsion.
Mm-hmm.
And is that addiction, or is it OCD, or is it both? I don't know. Probably both. Again, do we have to make the distinction? I don't know. Well, so am I just supposed to never have sex again because it's too dangerous for me?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, is that what we're doing here? And then, I've been known to binge eat chips and salsa. So, especially when I'm stressed. So I don't get to eat Mexican food because it's just too risky.
Especially in
Okay.
the spring when you make like 20 jars of it, by the way.
Yeah, but
Like,
but I guess, but what I'm saying is this whole, we have been taught to survive OCD by living in the gray area. And then on this particular topic, it's like, nope, black and white, nope, no gray. And so that's just, to me, it doesn't fit with what has helped me to recover from the worst of OCD. Again, I'm not, same thing. Like, if all of a sudden I started deciding that I needed to compulsively have sex 7 times a day, then that probably be like, oh, okay, like, that'd be a little same thing as if I'm drinking 12, Maker's Marks a night. Okay. But, I don't know that there's a magic number for what the right on either one of those items would be. And so I'm not interested in figuring that out.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think that I have to become celibate, and I don't think that I have to, never drink again. I don't intend to do either of those things, and I will always eat chips and salsa.
Chance makes an exorbitant amount of salsa every year. I mean, and he spends hours making it, and it lasts
days.
It lasts what, 8 months?
I think that is an addiction.
He sent me a picture of it. He was like, I'm going to make salsa today. I'm like, ooh, fun. I was like, a bowl. No, there was a whole table with jars of salsa. And then like 2 days later, he was like finishing up. And I was like, what? No, but I think, and just to kind of clarify when I was talking about earlier that I really wanted to start talking about addiction and then I stopped, is there, I'll just say it. When we were, like the first time I ever spoke out loud about we had a panel at a conference and there were 4 of us and we talked openly about our lived experience with substance use. The whole point of the panel was to highlight that people live with this. It was not a solution focused, we are going to tell you what to do. There were 4 different people on 4 different paths of living with substance use. And when we got finished, there was so much anger in the audience. Anger. And people stood up and said, basically, you're pieces of shit for not promoting sobriety. And it, like, to me, that was not the point of the panel. The panel was not why sobriety is great for OCD. The point was lived experience with substance use addiction and living with OCD. Right. And we just got slaughtered there and back. It was my first time I ever experienced I had an actual trauma response to something in regards to addiction. And in fact, it was, as much as I hate it, it actually opened my eyes to be able to explore what it means to be shamed about something like drinking alcohol. And so since then, I've done a couple videos here and there, but typically when I open up to the degree that Chance and I are opening up, there tends to be some backlash, and it's less about, it's just more about people's own experience and the fact that mainstream says either do this or else. Right. And we know now there are so many approaches to working within the confines of addiction that can help people and help people make better choices. Unfortunately, all we hear, I mean, I grew up in the era of the fried eggs on the, this is what drugs do to your brain. Yes, I am that old. Do you remember that chance? You were probably a baby.
No, we got Dare. Dare is, they came and they told us like in 5th grade about every drug and where to find it.
That's so awful. And you're like,
don't go in the dark alleys. They sell you meth there. I mean,
we got the fried eggs. This is your brain on drugs, which, by the way, I was scared, terrified of drugs. Still am, to be honest. Like, drugs and OCD brain for me doesn't mix. But either way, like it's just this. I think my frustration is like, why aren't we? I mean, this is called compassionate connection, so this is amazing. But really, why aren't we meeting people with compassion? Why aren't we meeting people with, if Patrick were here right now, he would definitely talk about what the Foglia Family Center does. They talk about why people got there, why people have gotten to a place where, what does it mean? Why do you do it? Because figuring out the why has been crucial in being able to advance past the shame. Like, I no longer say anymore that I struggle with alcohol use, because all I was doing is just backhanding myself every time I say that. It was reminding myself that I need to tell everybody that I'm struggling so they can feel better about the fact that I drink. Instead, I just say I have a relationship with alcohol. Sometimes it's good and sometimes it's bad. Who the fuck can't say that about anybody in their family any given day?
So, while you were talking, something that I was going to say earlier popped back up, and I think it is relevant. Yeah, I wrote it down. It's relevant to what you're saying. So, another reason why I think it's misguided to get real dogmatic and preachy about sobriety with OCD is that the traditional mainstream mindset for OCD has also been that it's strictly behavioral, and that the treatment for it's strictly behavioral, and so we don't get any closure. Okay, so you get out of treatment and you're literally, well, I'll just speak for myself. I'm basically told, hey, yeah, it might sound like you had a little trauma, maybe had some little things go on, but you're fine. We did ERP. It's all good. You don't need to know, like, you don't get to know why you have OCD. It just is. It's just there. Short straw. Right? And so you're going to so I don't get to have any closure on why this just happened to me. And then you're also going to shame me because I can't drink about it. Like, of course I wanted to drink when I got done with ERP, because I just came through this whole process where wellness, I was told, is just accepting the fact that this is your life, and that, we don't know why OCD is a thing. It just is.
Wellness is not knowing.
Yeah, right. Wellness is not knowing. Well, I'm here to tell you, I have a whole lot of ideas about why I have OCD.
These are not peer reviewed. I just want everyone to know before he starts sharing this.
I'm not going there, but I have a whole lot of reasons that I think that I developed OCD, and genetics is one of them, right? Like, no doubt about it. But to try to, tell somebody that they who hasn't been able to trust their most basic gut intuition about who they are in life, and to tell that person that they have to just keep it that way forever, and that's just how it is for you, and there's no explanation for why that would be. That's just not good enough to suit me. And I don't need, I don't need the whole world to come around and write a bunch of peer review crap to help me understand what happened to me.
I was just making a disclaimer.
Well, I'm just saying this is you meeting me where I'm at. and so, I mean, I hope that it gets there one day. If anybody wants to talk about it, I'll be your guinea pig. But but I have found tremendous healing post ERP through trauma work, through learning about complex trauma, and from validating my own shitty childhood. Now, clinicians can debate the ties between that and OCD. Y'all have a heyday. But I know that ERP was really helpful to me. It's not the end all be all. It's a progression. It's a step. It steps towards the best life that maybe I can have. Which, by the way, I'm going to have to work on forever. Mm-hmm. And so, I just, to me, it's just it was not going to work for Chance for him to survive this shit, and then be told like, sorry. Oh, and by the way, your longest friend, alcohol, he's got to go too. That's just not going to happen. So people can keep wishing that, but it's not going to happen.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I do think too, it's worth just mentioning again, the degree to which there's a big assumption that once the symptoms are under control, the mechanisms that we use to cope for so long should go too, or should just dissipate. And that's not really how it works. And I think that a lot of times that's where we are ignoring the trauma of it. And not to mention the trauma of having OCD. Now, I know that people don't like to hear that, especially therapists. Lauren, I don't think you're one of them, if you're still listening. But like a lot of therapists are like, don't mention trauma and OCD. And it's like, come on. Almost every person that I speak with in doing peer support that lives with OCD has unresolved trauma from the experience. It's not that I can't say that trauma causes OCD or not. Like I don't know what causes OCD. But what I'm saying is that we walk, especially if you have lived with it for the duration of time that majority of people do, the content of the OCD, just the depth that you get with it before you can find a therapist that can help. There are so many areas of trauma. And what we do know is that trauma and addiction are related. Right. And so when you're getting your symptoms, this is just me validating what you're saying, Chance. It's like going into like having heart disease and let's treat the symptoms, ERP, treat the symptoms. This is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to make the symptoms go away. But what else is going on that caused the heart disease? Like what else is going on that has caused how you got to this place? We don't explore that as a community. We don't. And people are too scared to. There have been a few that have audaciously branched out and they get their teeth kicked in behind their back. But it's true. It's like, and then we couple that with alcohol, like, or addiction. And then we're also afraid as a community to address that, which is why I'm so glad we're doing this series. Let's talk more openly about it. Let's get therapists on here. Let's get lived experience. Let's get family. Let's get everybody talking about this so we can start having more conversations, because it's so important. And there's a big portion of our community that really feels like they don't have a voice.
And, one thing we've not talked about that I think is a good and relevant example is workaholism, right? So, and this is kind of what you were talking about earlier. There are some things that society praises, addictions that society praises you for, right? Well, one of the many issues and traumas of my childhood was having a workaholic father, right? Um, you know, that, so he was not an alcoholic, okay? At least not when he was raising me. And so, in that dynamic, we kind of look at workaholism. We're not worried about its effects on the family.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And let's not talk about that. This is America. We are rugged individualists.
Mm-hmm.
And so, nobody wants to talk about that. And instead, we just pick on we just find a couple little things to stigmatize, and as if they're the only culprit in harming other people. Right. I mean, I was my childhood was not one that was subjected to. I mean, I was not raised around the taboo addiction type stuff. There was no drugs and alcohol. I mean, we were, praying and stuff. So, there was none of that going on. And so, but I still experienced tremendous emotional neglect and just felt so hopeless in my home. And so, I guess and I'm not beating up on my parents or anybody's parents. I probably fail quite frequently with my family. And so I just don't, I just want to kind of drive home the point that maybe all addictions are not equal. I don't know the answer to that, but we sure do tend to pick on a few of them.
Well, and I also think it's important to mention the spectrum of it, which we don't often mention a spectrum. We mention the fringe, the people that, and there's a spectrum for OCD too, right? That people that are so extremely debilitated. The same way, there are people that cannot touch alcohol, cannot, and they cannot touch drugs, and they cannot, were they always like that? No. Or maybe not. I don't know. I don't know.
I do ruminate whether or not that's me or not, even though I don't have any real evidence to support
I'm not reassuring
touch alcohol.
I'm
Alcoholism
not,
is
not reassuring.
I have to do ERP about that later.
And then there are the people that have never had a drop of alcohol or never done anything ever. And so here we are with these spectrums. But I think the problem with the stigma around addiction is that all the people in the middle that are desperate to just feel like what they choose on a daily basis, and unfortunately it always gears towards shame for a lot of people. Whether it doesn't have to be alcohol either. It can be porn addiction. I hear about porn addiction so much, and it is something no one talks about. And it's like, we want to pretend like the porn industry doesn't exist. And I'm like, y'all, it's like $10 billion. Everybody watching porn. You know what I'm saying? Not everybody. There's a spectrum on that too. But what I'm saying is this is a rampant addiction place that has such a degree of shame. And I think people feel that if they aren't on those two spectrums and then they're in the middle somewhere, they're just desperate not to feel shame if they do give in. Right. And so to wrap that point up, that's why I have chosen to address my relationship with alcohol as I don't talk about it in the way that I'm struggling anymore with alcohol. I drink, but the moment that I label it as I'm struggling, I'm just catering to society so I can make them feel better about my drinking so that they can go, oh, she's struggling.
Oh, bless her heart.
It's alcohol, right? And I'm not going to do that anymore. It is my, I have a responsibility to my own health to make that choice. And the shame is not helping on a day where, again, if I'm triggered by trauma and I reach for a bottle of wine, right? And I open that bottle, I am now drowning in not only a trauma response, but the shame of drinking wine on top of it. That's not trauma informed.
Well, I agree with all of that. And I just think that it, again, just defies logic to me, which I know we're not allowed to try to be logical, but it defies logic to me that, it's all good. Just make space for POCD and HOCD and, don't feel any shame about that. Just let it come on in. Let's just lean in towards all of these things that make you want to die. But don't you dare grab a fucking cocktail. Give me a break. It's just, we can't be like you. Those two things just don't work together for me. And so now I'm not saying that to go get 12, but it's everything in moderation, right? I mean, if most people who have OCD are very rigid in lots of times on very opposite ends of the spectrum, right? You can be rigid in addiction or rigid in abstinence or whatever it is that you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I find wellness, my best living that I do is when I'm intentionally aware of and being in the gray, mm-hmm. and feeling what that feels like. At least that's been my experience so far at 34 years old.
Well, I think what you're trying to say is, if I can just clarify, instead of having to feel like you have to backtrack and say moderation, by the way, is I think that what you're trying to say is, in being someone who it is okay to make a choice if you are in control without feeling shame. And I think what our society tells us is that if I'm having a hard time and I want to have a cocktail, well, that's wrong, right? I mean, and so, I don't think society tells us that. I don't know what I'm trying to say. I'm just trying to clarify what you're trying to say. Like, I am an adult.
Good luck.
I am an adult in control of my choices. If I choose being home and having an entire bottle of wine, why am I going to feel shame about that? What, why? If it's, whatever, or one glass of wine, or choosing that day not to, because there could be shame involved in all of those choices, right? And the only shame I feel is coming from society that isn't even hanging out in my living room. They're not even watching TV with me. But it is from a young age, again, and maybe I shouldn't say society in general, although it's true, but, from the pressure of what I grew up with, the pressure of, it's so weird. Like, we get that talk from the South, and the South is probably, they drink the most.
Oh, yeah. I won't contest that.
But either way, I think it's just, I hope that the message comes through tonight that, like, Chance and I both recognize there's a spectrum, and that people cannot at times engage in addictive behaviors because it can be dangerous to them and to others. But when we look at this from the fringe, and there's this, and then there's the, you can't have any at all, we're missing out on all of these people in the middle that really need representation. And they really need to have that shame tempered down, because the shame is it's what gnaws at you, right? And when you have OCD too, Chance, I don't know if you agree with me or not, but like, that also can impact what your actual relationship with alcohol is, right? When you have OCD, it's like, well, if I have this, that must mean this. And what if this? And what if that?
Well, no, I wasn't joking when I said that alcoholism is a real OCD theme for me. I mean,
Well,
I can go into an all-on panic over whether or not to drink or not to drink. What does it mean if I don't drink? And I can feel more shame for not drinking than if I do drink, or vice versa. It just depends on the day. And if I'm in that cycle, any choice that I make, I'm probably gonna ruminate about it. But I mean, and that's why for me, it just doesn't. It's never really felt that different from any other type of theme, and I've had every theme I've ever heard of, I think. And so it just, yeah, I know. And so, and so I just don't know. It just doesn't seem that different. And I mean, a lot of again, it's like the safety behaviors in regular OCD stuff. Like, you're not told to, I need to go check the locks on my house. Well, they still let you check the locks once. Right? Like you don't just have to sleep with your doors open. Okay. So I'm just saying, like, let's stop being so, pushing people to the fringes. I know that's what our society and our culture is experiencing on a much larger, like, social scale. We like to, like, that's where everybody's operating, is on the fringes. But it's just so important to, I think, people who have OCD, in order for them to live well, to be able to comfortably and without shame bebop around in the gray areas of this stuff, and let that meandering occur without shame.
Right. And I also think it's important to remember that, that people are afraid to talk about what they're experiencing with addiction because they're afraid that they're not going to get treatment. Because it has become, I know that this is changing, and we've talked a lot about this on these panels, which is amazing. We've got Lori and we've got Lauren and Patrick and these therapists that are really embracing and trying to encourage people to treat addiction and OCD at the same time, for the love of everything that's holy. But the other element of that is people develop these coping strategies, and then they're forced to stay silent about it because they're so scared if they disclose it, they're not going to get treatment. Because how many times have people gone into therapists and said, in their assessment, well, how many times do you smoke weed per day? Well, I smoke twice a day. How many beers do you have? I have 5 beers a day. Well, I'm not going to treat you. Those aren't the standards, just so y'all know. I'm just throwing it out there. But people are too scared, and they're going to, they might lie.
Well, I was about to say, like, pro tip, low ball.
But it's not even a pro tip. Unfortunately, it just is, because people are desperate for treatment. And if they think that they're not going to get it, they're not going to tell the truth. And the sad thing is that if they really are struggling and need support with both, it can get in the way of treatment. Right. And so, yes, they might be deceiving the therapist, but they're too scared to not get it. It's just such a trap that we need to start talking about more in a way that is inclusive. How do we include people that are struggling with addiction and substance use that they develop to cope with this damn illness they've been living with for 10 years? And why it's not helpful to say, just quit. And then come back for treatment in 30 days. Nope.
Right.
You're going to choose the addiction every time.
I think a great testimony to how shameful people in the community feel about this would be I went to the OCD Gamechangers event in Denver, right, I guess, before COVID was happening. And there were like 5 people in the addiction breakout session.
I know.
And like 120 people in the other one about something fluffy. And so
it was OCD and trauma. That is not fluffy.
Well, whatever. But my point is that, like, there's just, like, that's just not an accurate representation probably of that population. And so, to suggest that, like, not that anyone is suggesting it, but I mean, I feel very strongly that a lot of people with OCD feel so much shame about addiction that only 5 of us would sit down and like talk about it.
There were actually like 9, but that included me and you.
Well, your memory is better than mine.
Of course, she's going to be there because she is like the best advocate, for it. But like, minus that, and then, well, I don't want to mention all the other people in case they feel shame. But still, no, you're right. And I mean, but I think that I'm going to be bold here. When our community as a whole is not making room to represent OCD and addiction at conferences and on many different forums and making it part of mainstream, then of course we're not going to get representation. Of course, we're not going to have people feeling comfortable, because if it's the silent niche over here that, oh my God, let's go into the shadows, then no one's going to want to go because no one wants to be found out. Let's normalize this shit. That was my whole intention in starting to talk openly about it. But the truth is it is like jumping in a pit of daggers. And I mean, I'm still going to talk about it, but I'm pretty busy right now and I can't get hit with daggers. I have to graduate.
Well, I think so to just drive that point home again, like, out of all the crazy shit that you've talked about on your YouTube videos, okay, like the thing that's not acceptable is addiction. It doesn't make sense.
I mean, I've never gotten shit over talking about my dog's red rocket, but for God's sake, let's not talk about drinking wine. Anyway, on that note, let's wrap up.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to come and talk about this, and in a very casual and authentic manner. So I appreciate the invitation, and would just ask everyone to try to be as open-minded as they can be about this topic, because for those of us who do struggle and have struggled, it doesn't help to feel shitty about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, thank you, Chance, and thank you for being here, and thank you, OCD Gamechangers and Compassionate Connections, for allowing us to come and talk about this. I think it's so important, and I echo what Chance says. If we are going to have conversations about this, we have to have conversations about every single realm of what people are struggling with. Otherwise, that is what pushes people to reach for that bottle. Shame to me is the biggest trigger to want to drink. I mean, 100%. Chance, you know this. How many times have I texted you and I'm like, I am in shame, I am in trauma, all I want to do is drink, right? Yeah. And but I do want to encourage people. I'm 40, almost 45 at this point, and I have lived with this for a long time and really transformed in the last 4 or 5 years. And what I did was look for therapy, look for education, really look at what the journey is for me. What is my relationship with addiction? What's my relationship with alcohol? And harm reduction is an amazing tool that has helped me. It doesn't help everyone, but it helps a lot of people. And it's worth exploring if other avenues aren't working. Let's start having some more open conversations with people on why they are experiencing this, because I think that Chance would probably be able to agree with me on this. I think neither of us even knew there was a why. We just thought we're shitty people because we drink.
Well, we've talked about this before. I've said it, that I did not come up with this, obviously, but we're, instead of asking, we're with alcohol, it's like, what's wrong with you? Why are you doing this? Nobody's asking what happened to you.
Yes.
Right. Trauma. And that's like that's the deal. Okay. Like, people who any of the addictions that are out there, any of them, even the ones that are socially acceptable, like the question is still what happened to you.
Yes.
Okay. It's not what's wrong with you. But we're just not there as a society. But this community could be there, and probably needs to be there to do a good job of supporting its people.
Well, then I guess we can just leave that with you tonight. And thank you for the trauma-informed care lens. That is actually the defining question for trauma-informed care. That's what we want to leave you with tonight. If you are in a situation where you feel like you battle addiction or you battle substance use and you're in that gray area that Chance and I are talking about, where you feel like you're not on the fringe, but you continually feel shame, you don't know how to address it, you don't know where to go, ask yourself, not what's wrong with you, what happened to you? And start there. I know for both Chance and myself, it has been transforming. So I hope that it helps you. And again, thank you, Compassionate Connections, for allowing us to come on and talk about this tonight. Always a pleasure, Chance. You're one of my faves. Appreciate you so much. Your insight is just so valuable. So
I always enjoy it. And I just noticed that my deer was being hidden by the OCD. All right. Have a great night.
And thank you to everyone who joined in. I was reading your comments. We were just engaged in talking, but really appreciate you being here. Lots of stuff that you're saying is really insightful and thoughtful, and we just so much appreciate that. And thanks to all the people that make these talks happen. And I'm so excited that we're going to continue to do this. OCD Gamechangers is a 501c3. So if you can donate, you can go to OCDGamechangers.com. Any donation helps. Soon, I will be coming on to announce our events for the fall. We are actually doing in-person events, but I don't want to give it away yet, but they're going to be amazing, including international. So stay tuned. We will see you next time, and I hope you have a lovely week.